In 1935, two explorers followed maps that no longer matched the mountains, where glaciers had shifted, paths vanished, and the truth of the Himalaya waited, hidden in ice and silence.
It's 2:20 a.m. I'm still buried in the Himalayan Club Journals, century-old field notes from the Himalayas. It's like diving deep into the documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s. The journals cover everything, from indigenous wisdom, cultural myths, to epic expeditions and groundbreaking discoveries. These forgotten stories are brought to life by synthetic voices in the Himalayan Journals podcast. Subscribe, zone out, binge, and pass it to a fellow mountain junkie.
In September 1935, two men set out from Calcutta for the high ranges of Garhwal. They were Dr. D.G. Macdonald of England and J.B. Auden. Their plan was to explore the mountains near Gangotri and Kedarnath, an area lying across the edges of Forest Survey of India maps. The beginning was not smooth. Macdonald suffered from an illness that made standing difficult, while Auden had a stiff back, a relic of rowing. Yet, by the time they left Mussoorie on the 3rd of October, both were fit enough for the road ahead. With them were 3 Sherpas from Darjeeling, Datondrup, Ang Tsering, and Pasang Angju, together with 25 locally recruited coolies. The party went over the eastern shoulder of Nag Tibba by the Deosar route and followed the Bhagirathi River to Harsil. There they expected to dismiss the Mussoorie coolies and hire local men. But the Survey of India had a mapping party in the valleys and had taken most of the available labor. After much discussion in corners of the rest house, some Mussoorie men agreed to remain, joined by a few villagers from Jala. Among them was Juin Singh, who had worked with Palace in 1933 and brought with him reliable friends. One, Jagru Singh, never complained of the cold or the dangers of the unknown. To keep them, wages had to be higher than usual, and the expedition grew more costly. Pasang Angju, who had shown great strength on an earlier journey with Auden, was now struck down by illness and anemia and had to be left behind at Harsil. On the 12th of October, the two leaders parted ways. Macdonald turned up the Kedarnath Glacier, while Auden went to Gaumuk to carry out a plain table survey of the snout of the Gangotri Glacier. The glacier stood grandly, with the Satapanth Peaks to the southeast and the Matterhorn-shaped Sonero Parbat to the south. When the survey was complete, Auden rejoined Macdonald, who had pitched a camp at 15,000 feet on the lateral moraine of the Kedarnath Glacier. Together, they hoped to attempt a Kedarnath peak from the north. Yet, the icefall blocking the valley proved too unstable. Macdonald climbed the lower part with crampons, but the broken blocks above, loosened by the sun, made further progress impossible. There were doubts, too, about the accuracy of the old Survey of India maps. A barometric height of 15,900 feet was marked at one point, but their aneroid readings gave about 14,800 feet. If the surveyors had truly reached 15,900 feet, they would have been almost at the top of the icefall. The explorers considered this unlikely unless the glacier had changed in the decade since. From their vantage, the glacier bent differently than maps suggested, and the peaks of Kedarnath, 21,580 and 22,770 feet, came into view, appearing climbable. The two men then descended to Gangotri. There, in a wet evening, the Mussoorie men fulfilled their devotions at the temple, guided by the resident priest, whose skill with light transformed the shrine's interior into shifting images and shadows. The Mussoorie men were paid off, and now the party relied on Juin Singh's men and the Jala villagers. From the Bhagirathi Valley, they turned into the Rudragaira Gorge, climbing through Deodar Forest to higher camps at 11,800, 13,600, and finally 15,000 feet. Birch gave way to juniper for fuel as they gained height. Auden made rough surveys of the glaciers and peaks, noting that the maps required much revision. From the high camps, they studied 3 peaks, the highest around 21,900 feet. One, approached by a hanging glacier, seemed too dangerous with its risk of rockfalls. Another required crossing a crevassed ice saddle. At 19,000 feet, Tandrup, Macdonald, and Auden agreed it was unsafe to continue. Ropes saved the less experienced men from hidden crevasses as they retreated. Only later, from a lower camp, did they realize that the saddle they had followed was not in line with the peak they intended. The clouds had often hidden the views until late in the expedition, and perspective in the mountains is hard to judge. On the 29th of October, they returned to Harsil. Snow fell the next day, down to 10,500 feet. With funds running short, Macdonald went to explore Banderpunch, while Auden went up the Nella, or Lamkaga Valley, for geology. From a camp at 11,300 feet, he had a splendid view of the Gangotri group. The return journey took them through Nakuri, Singat, and the Kurmola Valley to Darasu, and then along the Nagon Kanatal Danolti track to Mussoorie. That last day's march, with the Himalaya on one side and the dun and plains on the other, brought the journey to its end. Pasang Angju, who had been left at Harsil, was too weak to walk and returned on a pony. Macdonald came back soon after with Da Tandrup and Ang Tsering, who had been cheerful throughout. The weather had been mixed, with cycles of storms and clear days, but in their highest camps they had endured nights below zero without strong winds. It was the close of an excursion that had tested strength, revealed new surveys, and traced paths across the glaciers of Gangotri and Kedarnath in the autumn of 1935.